Dwarf Bobob. Although initially identified as a juvenile bobob, groundbreaking new research indicates that this creature is in fact a member of the Breadbug Family. A close relative of Breadbug, it escapes predation through mimicry. Unique adaptation of the bobob's crimson coloration allows the species to safely commingle. Such effective adaptation and obfuscation by prey species is rare, indicating this clever creature is a master of mimicry. Albino Dwarf Bobob. A bobob larva after its first molt. Due to its pale coloration, it was assumed to be a mimic when it was first discovered. It was later confirmed to be a true dwarf bobob. To avoid predation from adult bobobs, it spends the majority of the daytime hours hiding underground. It becomes more active at night, when its paler coloration is more difficult to see. In this state, it is difficult to discern what species of bobob any given juvenile may be by appearance alone. It's only after a bobob's second molt that they start to display more distinguishing species characteristics. Bobob. This large organism has the familiar mandibles and cranial morphology of the Grubdog family, as well as the characteristic bulging eyes. As with most grub dogs, the creature's cranium comprises half of its total length and girth. Showing a scarlet abdomen with white spots, this creature is primarily nocturnal, choosing to prey upon smaller creatures returning to their nests. Originally classified as the spotty bobob, further research has reclassified this species as the basic bobob. Subspecies of varied colors have recently been discovered, but academics are divided into two rival camps over how to handle their classification. Jumbo bobob. During reproduction, after an egg is fertilized by a sperm, any excess chromosomes are usually discarded through a process called meiosis. But occasionally this process fails to occur, and a bobob individual will develop irregularly due to this chromosomal abnormality. Specimens like this one are stronger than the average bobob and can exhibit more aggressive behavior. However, they are not able to procreate, as they will never reach sexual maturity. Dwarf Orange Bobob. Just as dwarf red bobobs mimic the appearance of the bobob, it was theorized that a variant mimicking the orange bobob must also exist. Recent fieldwork has confirmed this theory. Orange Bobob. This bobob species boasts a garish color pattern with a deep orange body and black spots. The orange bobob's yellow bloodshot eyes make it clear that this bobob is excessively edgy and high-strung, making it much easier to wake from deep sleep than other species in the Grubdog family. Dwarf Bobear. A spotty bobear larva in its third stage of development. This creature's body structure is nearing maturation. However, unlike mature bobears, it has yet to claim its own patrol route, and thus it is dependent upon its parents for guarding direction. Spotty Bobear. A mid-sized subspecies within the Grubdog family. The spotty bobear's unique feeding habits set it apart from other grub dogs. It patrols a set path, searching for prey instead of passively feeding on creatures that wander into a limited territorial range. When entering spotty bobear's habitat, it is wise to proceed with extreme caution until the bobear's patrol path can be clearly identified. Dwarf Frosty Bobob. Much like more mature specimens, the juvenile Frosty Bobob is able to create and carry ice on epidermis that promotes extracellular freezing. However, they take an entire night to regenerate their ice, which is why they're often accompanied by adults. Juveniles display a smaller number of spots than the adults, causing some to believe this was actually a species of mimicking Breadbug. However, the results of further analysis proved this was not the case. Frosty Bobob. A bobob with large amounts of ice and frost covering its midsection. It's unusual to find ice such as this attached to a living organism, as it's cold enough to freeze small animals and regenerates any ice mass that gets broken off. This bobob species' intercellular stores of sugars, amino acids, and organic acids provides it with a plant-like resistance to freezing, making it possible for the bobob to touch the ice without freezing itself. Fiery Boblax. Bodily excretions of a highly flammable, waxy substance interact with the cell structure of this grubdog skin, causing a chemical reaction that produces extremely high temperatures. The skin benefits from a spongy cell structure that diffuses the surface heat, protecting the creature's inner organs. Due to the astounding amount of heat produced by this beast, it should be observed with great caution. Whip-tongue Bobob. Instead of the gnashing jaws usually found in related species, it uses its extensible viscous tongue to capture prey. Even before it opens its mouth, it's recognizable by its tapered snout and black spots against its white back. Some theorize that it evolved its long tongue to snatch prey drawn to high-blooming flowers, but a recent finding confirmed that until its second molt, this creature feeds with its teeth much like other grubdog species. It'll begin to use its tongue once it reaches adulthood. Bobob larva. As its name implies, this creature is a bobob in an early stage of development. Its distinct bobob coloration has yet to appear, but it already exhibits other uniquely bobob characteristics. It is capable of hunting nourishing independently without the help of its parents. Empress Boblax. Initial observations placed doubt on the capability of the Grubdog family to support a strong ant or bee-like social structure, but recent studies show the family is capable of such complexity for brief periods when certain external parameters are met. The egg sac of the largest female grubdog within a given range swells to dramatic proportions in response to environmental changes, such as the sudden depletion of prey species. These females temporarily take on the role of pack matriarch. Also, in pack formation, it has been observed that nearly all males not involved in species reproduction undergo natural sex changes. The characteristics of such specimens are quite intriguing indeed. Emperor Boblax. The largest member of the Grubdog family is normally found burrowed underground. This camouflage allows the predator to surprise smaller creatures and use its long, adhesive tongue to capture prey. The thick hide and angular hump give the organism a distinct rock-like quality. During the rainy season, moss grows freely on its hump, making it nearly impossible to distinguish this lethal predator from a stone. Sovereign Boblax. An Emperor Boblax of extremely advanced age. It will no longer display the pack behavior commonly exhibited by younger members of its species. Instead, as an individual ages, it leaves the herd and exhibits more solitary behaviors. It feeds by using its strongly developed legs to leap upon and crush its prey with speed disproportionate to its massive body. To determine the age of any given specimen, you can count the rings of hide calcified in the form of carapace. One ring forms roughly every year the creature lives. Individuals with over 100 rings have been discovered so far. The Sovereign Boblax's back is often covered in moss and pteridophytes. On a few occasions, specimens have been found with a rare species of mushroom called a bobarol growing on its back. Fiery Blowhog. This creature expels a volatile phosphorus compound from its snout that combusts upon contact with air. This fire-breathing ability is dependent upon the air-to-fuel ratio at its mouth. catalyst reaction within the expelled compound, and purification of the compound. Thus, it is highly unlikely such a complex process could cause the spontaneous explosion of a fallen blowhog. This process is also perhaps to avoid risk of spontaneous combustion in the belly of a live specimen. However, one should still treat a fiery blowhog with great care during transfer. Watery blowhog. A variant subspecies of the fiery blowhog, the watery blowhog lacks several of the genes necessary for the production of fire-producing catalysts, and thus expels jets of non-flammable liquid. This subspecies appears to have only recently evolved. However, the hereditary traits of this variant are dominant and highly robust, so its population is rapidly increasing. Snowy blowhog. This species has the ability to condense atmospheric carbon dioxide within an organ called a cold sac. The cold sac creates dry ice, and its vapors are then expelled as icy breath. A close relative to this species, the fiery blowhog can keep its internal body temperature from rising because the phosphoric compounds it expels only ignite when they make contact with the air. In contrast, the snowy blowhog maintains internal body conditions below freezing, and its other internal organs are protected by thick layers of fat and the extracellular freezing that occurs within its cold sac. Titan blowhog. Due to a hormone abnormality, this fiery blowhog specimen has grown to an irregularly giant size. As a result, its mouth and the organs that regulate its fire-breathing abilities are significantly larger, so the firepower of this specimen greatly exceeds that of its normal counterpart. The fire it produces is actually so strong that the stress it places on the creature's internal organs is magnified, thus reducing its overall lifespan. This specimen is also unable to reproduce. Blizzarding blowhog. This specimen is actually a snowy blowhog, that lethal expeller of icy air. However, it's grown to a gigantic size thanks to an endocrine abnormality. Unlike the Titan blowhog, this condition does not sentence the blizzarding blowhog with a shorter lifespan. In fact, its lifespan is actually much longer than that of the average snowy blowhog. The organs that produce the dry ice are also enlarged in this specimen, perhaps in order to make production more efficient. Tusked blowhog. Similar to an ancestor species of the fiery blowhog, this creature has a pair of sharp tusks that it uses to charge enemies with a vigorous violence. It demonstrates its aggressive nature when it pursues its prey and when it's attacked by a predator of its own. In the case of the latter, the tusked blowhog will attack its attacker, causing them to balk while it can dash away to safety. This species also has an extremely sharp sense of smell, which it uses to detect the pheromone-like scent of its favorite food, underground mushrooms. Armored Cannon larva. This specimen is a lithopod larva. Lithopods, like Flint Beetles, use internal metabacteria to aid chemical digestion. This metabacteria can only survive in certain environments, such as within the body of certain insects, so lithopod larvae do not contain any metabacteria immediately after hatching. Larvae feed on partially digested or regurgitated by mature lithopods, ensuring the larvae obtain metabacteria they would not normally have acquired. Horn Cannon Beetle. Males of this species are known for their horn-like blowholes. When females reach maturity, their blowhole closes and they lose the ability to launch rocks. At the start of the breeding season, the females lay eggs on rocks launched by a male. The rocks then become food for the growing larvae. Though once mistaken for adult almond cannon beetles, this species is actually a naturalized non-native species that migrated here from another continent. The horn cannon beetle can breed with adult armored cannon beetles, but only about half the eggs will actually hatch. This hybrid species has the potential to seriously pollute the gene pool. Furthermore, It exhibits aggressive territorial behavior, sometimes launching boulders at young armored cannon beetles, which has driven the latter species to the verge of extinction. Arctic Cannon Larva. Like other members of the Lithopod family, its internal bacteria are specialized to form ice compounds from ambient moisture, which then expels as projectiles. It technically doesn't rely on cold temperatures to create this ice, which is formed by pressurized internal fluids that act as a coolant. When the projectiles rapidly expand, they absorb ambient heat, lowering the air temperature enough for the moisture in the air to freeze. Arctic Cannon Beetle. Upon reaching maturity, the blowhole on its head closes, leaving in its place the pointed crest of the Arctic Cannon Beetle's shell. In order to get enough food in nutrient-deficient environments, adult specimens start breathing through their mouths. Some experts have posited that this adaptation caused the species to lose territorial competitions with the armored cannon larva, driving it into colder environments. Though this beetle has increased suction strength, it must ventilate via a spiracle on its abdomen and opens its shell to avoid rapid body inflation. Female Sheargrub. The males of this species are purple and black creatures with tapered mouths, while the females are lighter in color and lack an armored exoskeleton. As with most mandiblodds, these creatures have regressed to the point where they have lost both legs and wings. They can be seen crawling around on the ground and are believed to feed on the vegetable extracts from the congealed fluids of expired Pikmin. Male Sheargrub. This specimen is a male Sheargrub. Having lost both legs and wings, the male burrows into the soil and waits to ambush small creatures that pass by. This beast's mandibles can be dangerous, making creatures such as Pikmin easy prey. Mama Sheargrub. The mama Sheargrub will typically molt when it reaches maturity, then dig itself into the ground to prepare for egg laying. However, certain types like this specimen exhibit neoteny and retain the appearance of a juvenile of the species. If this species locates an abundant food source, they won't leave it. Sometimes they will stay at that spot for years, steadily growing to gigantic proportions like this one. Though this specimen has the look of a juvenile, it has fully developed reproductive abilities and can achieve impressively high birth rates. Its offspring, however, are the same size as a typical Sheargrub. Shearwig. Unusual for their genus, flying mandiblards have retained their wings. However, only the adult males of this species can fly. Females of this species spend most of the lifespan underground. They do emerge for a period after maturation to spawn, but they never metamorphose. Shearflea. The sensory hairs growing on this creature's orange body segments can detect body temperatures, movement, and carbon dioxide levels. It clings to its prey with its claw-like front legs and sucks their blood through its pointed proboscis. Researchers found that the Shearflea can store energy created while contracting its bellows-like body in the elastic proteins located at the root of its hind legs, allowing it to repeatedly jump very high. Its reproductive rates are rather explosive. A small group of egg-laying females can boom into a population of over 100 in a month's time. Joustmite. Others within this family wear their shells on their bellies, but this one's shell functions more like a helmet. Its wings have atrophied into uselessness, so instead it burrows beneath the ground and pops out only to pierce prey with its needle-like proboscis and drain their bodily fluids. Larval joustmites remain underground for years, or even decades in some cases. Flighty Joustmite. It's a close relative of the original Burrow-Nits species, but this variety of joustmite still has the use of its wings. Oddly, it still makes its habitat below ground, and employs the same tactic of lying in wait before emerging to strike. The helmet protecting its head is functionally as hard as steel due to waxy secretions in its pores that absorb and redirect any shocks it sustains. Swooping Snitchbug. The Scarpenids originally lived on the ground, sporting poorly developed vestigial wings. This species developed enlarged antennae that can be used as makeshift wings. Scarpenids are attracted by the sight of large groups of Pikmin in cavalry formation and will swoop down to seize them. However, Scarpenids do not eat Pikmin, and they will drop any seized Pikmin after a short time. The reason for this behavior is unknown, but I look forward to further research in the area. Skitterleaf. The skitterleaf is a relative of the pond skater that sheds its wings and adapted to life on the ground. With no residual traits of its airborne past, the skitterleaf can neither fly nor skit across the surface of the water. The wings have slits involved into the leaf-like structure on its back, which serves to hide the skitterleaf through mimicry. It appears quite effective, as few predators can see through this clever disguise. Desiccated Skitterleaf. The skitterling variant that resembles dead leaves, its legs have developed in specific ways. The front claws capture prey, while the flat hind legs are suited for running and swimming. Its highly tuned senses keep it still for any creature but Pikmin. Once it gets its claws on its prey, it doesn't easily let go. Recent research has revealed that its camouflage has a second purpose beyond hunting. Scavengers are fooled by its disguise into carrying its eggs, thereby expanding the population. Fiery Dweevil. Members of the Dweevil family are known for carrying objects of astounding size on their backs, then mimicking them. The Fiery Dweevil is one species in this family. Generally, this is a very gentle insect that feeds on grass nectars, but when faced with danger, the Fiery Dweevil ignites flammable internal gases, juts out of its jaw, and spews scorching flames. As this clearly makes it a rather dangerous insect, it is best not to linger directly in front of it. Anode Dweevil. Members of the Dweevil family are known for carrying objects of astounding size on their backs and mimicking them. The Anode Beetle is one species in this family. They seem to have no particular preference for which objects they carry on their backs, as they will carry anything they can lift. They boast an internal organ that generates electrical charges, which the Anode Beetle releases when it senses danger. Hydrodweevil. The Hydrodweevil is one member of an insect family known for mimicking objects by carrying them on their backs. Several points of differentiation with other members of the species have been confirmed, such as body color and behavioral patterns, but none of these suggests major deviations in the creature's genetic structure. This makes it clear that it is a relative of the family. When attacked by enemies, the Hydrodweevil spits out bodily fluids in response. Spacesuits corrode and oxidize when they come in contact with this liquid. Ice-blown Dweevil. Dweevils have varying body colors in response to their feeding habits. Each species feeds on different types of plants and small animals, so the symbiotic bacteria that creates their pigmentation differ as well. The ice-blown Dweevil lives in cold habitats and spews frigid gas, so the workings of its symbiotic bacteria are dulled and it retains its natural color, which is white. It's been confirmed that in more temperate climates, where food that the Fiery Dweevil eats is readily available, the ice-blown Dweevil's coloration is much peachier. Venom Dweevil. The Venom Dweevil is one member of the Dweevil family, which is known for mimicking objects by carrying them on their backs. These insects often carry the carcasses of other life forms on their backs. Apparently, this is not for the purpose of transporting them as food, but instead is another example of their mimic behavior. The venom weevil produces two different chemical compounds within its body, which form poisonous gas when mixed and expelled. This gas is used only for self-defense. Arachnode. This spider-like creature has distinctive yellow stripes on its black carapace. It spins webs in high-traffic areas and waits for prey to blunder into them. Unlike its relatives in the Arachnorb and Weevil families, it's ambisexual and has 8 legs. Some theorize that its gynandry is meant to aid in reproduction, though of course it cannot reproduce on its own. There is another theory that this species is in fact 2 organisms of opposing gender stuck together, and since no one has ever found a 4-legged single-sex specimen, this remains speculative. Baldy long legs. A shaggy long legs that has lost its hair. It has similarities to the beady long legs, but it doesn't secrete wax from its exoskeleton, and thus lacks its cousin's unique patterning. The absence of wax also allows small insects to climb its legs without slipping. Its central orb splits horizontally, but researchers have yet to determine the significance of this difference. Man-at legs. This species of the Arachnorb family fuses with machinery at a crucial point in the maturation process, giving it the ability to fire energy bursts from the launcher beneath its orbicular torso. However, the man-at legs itself is not in control of this weapon. Instead, the mechanical portions of its structure appear to automatically acquire and attack targets. The man-at legs has a gentle disposition, and as a member of the Arachnorb family, it has no natural enemies. It is particularly difficult to understand why this species would develop such awesome offensive capabilities, leading to rumors among the scientific community that it was the machinery that approached the Arachnorb and proposed a symbiotic relationship. Groovy long legs. This species has some remaining organic internal organs, but its carapace and eyes are made up of inorganic material. All 19 of its eyes are actually photoelectric sensors that the species uses to precisely locate its prey. The gas emitted from the posterior of its first leg joints includes a chemical substance that, after making contact with another organism's brain, temporarily controls that organism's actions. The groovy long legs uses this natural phenomenon called the endless dance to make its prey jump between its legs while it moves around in bizarre rhythms. The entire interaction is seemingly odd for a living organism, but the line between organic and inorganic on this planet is not always clear. Anode Beetle. This specimen is representative of an insect hybrid that uses electricity in addition to glycogen for its energy. Although difficult to confirm due to their microscopic size, tiny hairs on the creature's legs cause the friction that generates the electrical charge. The electrical charge is processed by the creature's internal battery structure, and then stored as an electrical field. As this field reaches critical levels, surplus electricity is emitted, resulting in a low voltage current that is transmitted between specimens. It can shock other creatures in the immediate vicinity. Considering this process, it can be surmised that the largest impetus to pack behavior is not so much for the synergic effort of producing as a pack, as it is to take advantage of this most effective means of group preservation. Iridescent Flint Beetle. Flint beetles are known to hide in the grass until approached, at which point they jump out and scurry around. These creatures keep undigested food pellets in their stomachs to sustain them through winter, but given the right stimulus, they will spit them out. Recent research has revealed that these pellets are enveloped in a membrane that seals and preserves them in a sterile, airtight environment. If kept at room temperature, it seems that this pellet membrane will keep its contents fresh for up to 6 months. The membrane may be made from the same substance that gives the exoskeleton of the flint beetle its beautiful sheen. Doodlebug. While life forms that excrete foul musts to warn of danger are not rare, The doodlebug is the only species known to release flatulence when active above ground. Interestingly enough, since it is merely releasing the gas created by the decay of the contents of the creature's intestines, it does not have a special musk-producing organ. This means the creature is in fact merely flatulating. Spectral analysis of the rank gas indicates it contains not only methane, but hydrogen sulfide as well, making the flatulence a grade 13 biohazard. Iridescent glint beetle. This variety of beetle consumes subterranean minerals. Due to the fact that it rarely emerges above ground, sightings of this particular species are extremely rare. While minerals are this beast's primary source of food, the beetle itself does not have the ability to digest these minerals. Instead, metabacteria living inside the beetle's stomach chemically break down the minerals. The resulting purified metal is discharged, but rare metals such as gold and platinum crystallize onto the iridescent glint beetle's shell, resulting in the beautiful laminated shimmer. Mitite. These parasitic insects feed on eggs. Upon reaching maturity, they excrete a special pheromone that attracts females of particular species, enticing these females to swallow the mitites whole. Pikmin, however, seem to dislike the scent. After entering the host female's body, the mitites lay their own eggs inside the host's eggs just prior to the host spawning. Scutterchuck. Its main offensive strategy is to launch the crystal it carries on its back, otherwise it's completely defenseless. In most circumstances, it's a peaceful herbivore whose diet consists primarily of moss. When in danger, however, it wastes no time defending its territory by breaking small rocks and hurling them at the threat. In order to ensure it has a steady supply of rocks with which to defend itself, it shares its habitat with calcified crushblat larvae, so it can make use of the shells they cast off. Skate. It skates on water at high speed thanks to tiny hairs on the tips of its feet. These hairs are coated in an ultra-hydrophobic substance to minimize friction against the water's surface. Its long proboscis functions as a straw to take in water, which is stored in a reservoir on its head, as well as to spout it out as a weapon against small insects. While taking in water, it also takes in microscopic plankton, meaning that its prime means of defense is also a feeding mechanism. Muckerskate. A subspecies of the skeeter skate that's adapted to life in muddy wetlands. It uses its straw-like proboscis, the inside of which is packed with densely grown hair, to capture any plankton living in the mucky water and filter out everything else. When an enemy approaches, it will threaten them by shooting out the murky substance. This combination of muddy water and gastric juices has a higher viscosity, so it can essentially bury Pikmin and a lot of other stuff in dirt. White spectralids. It's remarkably similar to its unmarked brethren, but the telltale wing patterns and lone pair of hind legs give it away. It sticks to its own habitat for the most part. Though it may fly away to reach a flower or escape a boblax, it will soon return to its home. The white variety gathers no nectar, but sometimes may be found carrying raw material. Yellow spectralids. The primary morphological difference from other spectralids is the eye-like spot on its hind wings. When crossbred with the red spectralids, the offspring has a 25% chance of inheriting these spots on orange-colored wings. Would this count as a new subspecies? Red spectralids. Its red wings have several spots, unlike the lone spot in each wing of the yellow variety. Its scales contain trace amounts of ultra-spicy flakes, which are mixed up into its saliva as it sucks up the nectar from flowers. The combined flakes, saliva, and nectar are refined into ultra-spicy nectar inside the creature, which it uses as a growth supplement for its eggs. Despite this, its reproductive capabilities are quite low. It is for this reason that the red variant fetches astronomical prices among collectors. Snowflake Fluttertail. The cooling cycle in its body uses ammonia as a refrigerant to chill the moisture it absorbs from the air until it reaches a supercooled state. By then spraying it out of the several vents on its belly, the Snowflake Fluttertail creates a delicate cocoon out of ice to protect both itself and freeze its prey. Its rolled-up spirally proboscis evolved from an upper jaw and can catch entire prey with fine hairs on its surface. Though it mimics a type of swallowtail butterfly, this creature is actually more closely related to moths. One might extrapolate that its ancient ancestor was unable to adapt to the cooling climate and therefore went extinct. Creeping Chrysanthemum. Like Pikmin, the Creeping Chrysanthemum is a member of a group of creatures with ambulatory root structures. This creature is known as a mimic, but because it is actually a form of plant, this label is not entirely accurate. It uses its mimicry to lie in wait and ambush prey, unrecognized even by Pikmin despite being members of the same class of organisms. It relies on preying upon other creatures to provide sustenance, so it has no need of leaves for photosynthesis. Generally speaking, the role of plants within an ecosystem is as a producer species, and thus plants are generally found at the bottom of the food pyramid. However, on this strange planet, the line between producer plants and consumer plants is blurred. Startlespore. The defining characteristics of the fungi that grows from its head differ from that of the Chrysanthemum family's Creeping Chrysanthemum, but the makeup of the body out of which they grow is mostly the same. As a result, we can theorize that like fellow Ambulardices the bulbman, this species is not an evolutionary variation, but that the body is a parasite that is nestled inside a group of mushrooms. Because the hosts are mushrooms, the startlespore cannot photosynthesize. Instead, it gains nutrients by catching its prey with highly poisonous fluids, or by absorbing the nectar in the ground left behind as creatures killed by its poison decompose. Breadbug. The adult breadbug competes for many of the same food sources as Pikmin, but its thick-skinned hide allows it to withstand most Pikmin group attacks. However, some researchers claim to have observed breadbugs being overwhelmed by massive numbers of Pikmin and reduced to food. Giant breadbug. This gargantuan species of the greater Breadbug family has a torso so perfectly square that it almost seems like it was formed in a mold. For a brief period after birth, the giant breadbug competes for food with smaller breadbugs, but upon reaching maturity, it seeks out much larger prey. This is the primary reason two species with similar feeding habits can coexist in the same habitat. Hordes of Pikmin appear to pose the only plausible threat to this massive creature's life. Gildamandwee. Immediately after hatching, this species presents itself in a gill tadpole-like form and grows its legs after about a week. This juvenile Gildamander specimen is estimated to be about 1 month old due to the presence of an oar-like growth on its back, and the fact that it has already emerged onto land. The living ore has substances similar to treasure within it, a peculiar scent, and has an effect on both sensors and Pikmin. However, the lantern organ on its head is still undeveloped, and can only emit very faint electromagnetic waves. For this reason, juvenile Gildamanders often hide out of sight to avoid Pikmin attacks. Gildamander. The ore-like growth on its back is a coagulated bodily fluid that includes a substance similar to sparklium, which can make our mechanical sensors go berserk, to use the technical term. This living ore emits a scent that lures the creature's prey, so it's important for their feeding process. The lantern-like organ atop its head emits electromagnetic waves that are known to affect Pikmin and onions, confusing them into thinking that Gildamander is their leader, allowing it to withdraw Pikmin directly from the onion. However, it cannot go as far as to command them as a squad, so the Pikmin will often hide under cover and are able to avoid ingestion. Miniature Snootwacker. Immediately after birth, this species' skin starts to harden, and before long, it will reach the same impenetrable toughness as that of an adult. Adult Snootwackers dexterously use their trunks to grab food from high tree branches, but juveniles consume fruits and nuts that have fallen to the ground, as well as other types of terrestrial flora. This specimen's legs and torso muscles are underdeveloped compared to those in their nose, so they lack the strength to maintain their posture and easily lose their balance. Mammoth Snootwhacker. The long nose on this specimen has neither bone nor cartilage, but is made up entirely of muscle and can be flexibly curved and extended. Its tough hide consists of densely layered collagen lattices that cover almost its entire body, leaving only the regular skin on the belly exposed. The fully developed trunk is large and quite heavy, so the mammoth snootwhacker usually rolls it inward to carry it closer to its center of gravity. But if its territory is invaded, it will extend the trunk and flail it around, even using it to strike a perceived enemy. Just like a juvenile snootwhacker, their nose comprises a disproportional amount of their body weight, resulting in poor balance. If attacked from behind or from the side, even an adult of the species is easily knocked over. Sunsquish, a type of primitive organism called a protochordate. In its juvenile state, it has a skeleton-like structure called a notochord. It flaps its fin tail to move, and lives within other creatures' eggs as it grows. As its body develops, it starts to exhibit mollusk-like qualities, but its highly exposed external stomach can directly digest prey on contact, and can also be used for locomotion. Foolix, a member of the Grubdog family, this primitive life form is made up of a single cell, which is quite odd given its size. Its nucleus is shaped like a bulbous star, and individuals move by using the fin at the end of its flagellum-like tail to quickly expand and contract its gelatinous body. If the nucleus is removed, its soft body loses all structure and splatters, but as long as the nucleus is still alive, the Foolix can return to its original form. Usually, the Foolix will mimic nectar and wait for its prey. Its gel, which includes fire-extinguishing fluids, will then expand to capture and feed on unsuspecting organisms. Downy Snagret. Due to a common phenomenon known as imprinting, this baby will recognize anything that it sees or hears within a given length of time after it hatches as its parent, and consequently follows it around. However, the Downy Snagret has two specific conditions for imprinting. The first is that the target must be tall and blue, and the second is related to the sound of its cry. This means that it will never make a mistake with something as small as we are, and will instead recognize it, or us, as food. Since it is still a fledgling, the Downy Snagret does not go underground to feed. Instead, it stays on the surface where there is plenty of food. It looks harmless enough, but beware. Its parents may be hiding nearby until the baby is old enough to fend for itself. Burrowing Snagret. The majority of Snagret species lie in wait to ambush and capture prey, with a body type perfectly adapted to such sudden strikes. It violently attacks small, surface-dwelling insects. Distributed across a relatively wide range, subspecies of Snagret suited to the varying soil conditions have emerged, making the Snagret the most geographically represented species besides the baobab. Visually resembling the burrowing Snagret is the burrowing Snarrow, the range of which partially overlaps with the Snagret's range. While the two may appear similar, when pulled from the ground, they can be distinguished by the presence or absence of tail and wing markings. Waddlequaff. Its overdeveloped respiratory muscles allow it to suck in large volumes of air through its long, thick beak while feeding. Its feathers are too small to use for flying. The current theory is that this is due to its niche position in the ecosystem being quite secure thanks to lack of natural predators and little competition for food in its habitat. However, with the expansion of Pikmin territory, recently its numbers have been gradually declining. Scorchcake. Related to bivalves, it uses its internal muscles to dexterously manipulate its upper and lower shells. This ability allows it to squash eggs in small ambular dices like Pikmin, and thus returning nectar to the ground. It then feeds off the microorganisms and moss that benefit from the nectar. To further facilitate the growth of its food, the scorchcake will secrete oils from its body through its shell and onto the ground. It then sets that area on fire, perhaps as a way to improve soil fertility. Shellcake. This species has muscular organs that can create electricity by using ion gradients within densely layered rows of electricity-generating cells, which are arranged in an asymmetrical series. It uses its plug-like protrusions to instantly shock its prey, and then squashes it. The squashed prey acts as fertilizer, improving the quality of the soil, so that the microorganisms and moss that the shellcake feeds upon can thrive. Freeze cake. By emitting frigid air from one side of its shell, it can freeze and squash any prey that approaches too closely. Food can be hard to find in extremely cold climates, so one theory is that this species has developed some kind of mechanism that allows it to store its prey for long periods of time. Puffstool, a type of ambulofungus. The current working theory is that the puffstool evolved from a more common species of fungus that gained animal-like characteristics over time, including the ability to walk. When it senses danger, it will scatter spores from under its cap, releasing a hallucinogen that confuses its attackers. The hallucinogenic compound in the spores is only effective against the species' natural enemies, the Pikmin, causing them to mistake it for their leader. Pikmin who fall into this trap are then used as workers to maintain nutrition or defenses for the puffstool. Toxstool. Much like the puffstool, the toxstool is neither animal nor fungus, but a mix of the two, or an ambulofungus. It doesn't serve a producer or consumer role in the ecosystem, but functions instead as a decomposer. It primarily parasitizes other living organisms by blanketing them with its spores. However, the toxstool can infect a deceased specimen as well. Its hyphae is able to move the muscles and control the body as if bringing it back from the dead. The way the fungal filaments grow differs based on the host organism. In some cases, they may cause the host to wander around in search of food to facilitate a more nutrient-rich fungal culture medium. They can also just use the host as a means to scatter more spores. Moldy Dwarf Babob. This is an example of a young babob body that's been infected by fungal filaments. Now a host, it unconsciously continues to seek out and ingest food, all the while scattering large amounts of spores out of the spore sacs on its back, until it can no longer move. After all host body activity ceases, the specimen mutates into a fungal culture that will eventually become a juvenile toxstool. Moldy Slooch. Both the nervous system and slime-producing organ of this specimen have been invaded by fungal filaments, which is why it scatters spores as it moves. It will also shake spores onto other creatures, thus infecting new hosts and expanding the toxstool's habitat and range. Once the host body ceases to function, it can no longer serve as a fungal culture medium because its bodily fluids dry up and the corpus shrinks. At that point, the host body is abandoned. Pyroclasmic Slooch, a species of terrestrial snail coated in flammable mucus instead of the traditional shell. The creature stays lubricated through constant secretion of mucus so that the fires never reach its skin. The most fascinating aspect of these creatures is their instinctive ability to avoid causing widespread fires by carelessly brushing plants. Bearded Amprat. The hair covering its face works as a capacitor. It charges electricity by rubbing the hair to build static, then discharges it at enemies intruding on its territory. It's more territorial than aggressive, attacking only when threatened rather than to hunt prey. It has several qualities unique to this ecosystem, such as breastfeeding its young, which may someday give rise to a whole new taxonomy of fauna here. Mamuta. The imbalanced asymmetrical arms of the mamuta are among its most notable features. Feeding on seeds and fruit, the mamuta is known to actually sow and grow plant species. While other species have exhibited seed-bearing behavior for the purpose of storage, the Mamuta is the only species so far known to actually cultivate fields of plants. Porcelion. Its needle-covered armor is soft and quite exposed. Furthermore, it has a cowardly disposition, so when it senses even the slightest danger, it shoots out its spikes. Regenerating new spikes requires significant amounts of caloric energy, so this creature requires significant amounts of food. This likely explains why, when it scrounges through garbage, it sucks up not just the insects it finds, but also the trash itself. They have ingested a few of the SS Dolphin's parts too, but those could never be mistaken for trash. Honey Wisp. This floating life form drifts effortlessly on the winds. Upon death, its physical structure instantly collapses, and as the creature is particularly elusive and difficult to catch, no sample specimens have been acquired as of yet. If we could simply recover a live sample, research on this species would likely proceed more smoothly. Puffy Blowhog. This species of blowhog uses internally generated hydrogen to inflate a flotation bladder and hover above the ground. The creature's electrified pulse creates a sash of color that flows along the surface of its body, making it a particularly beautiful species in the Blowhog family. Precisely how it is able to internally stabilize its highly explosive hydrogen and simultaneously generate electricity remains a mystery. The puffy blowhog blows leaves and grass around to eat the insects underneath. It maintains mid-air buoyancy by using its fins and releasing air through blowholes. This enables it to float effortlessly, even in the breeze. Icy Blowhog. This creature possesses 3 lungs, an air sac used as its primary respiratory organ, a flotation bladder that gives it its buoyancy, and a cold sac that stores cold air. Like the puffy blowhog, its buoyancy is a result of the hydrogen produced by electrolysis. Its icy breath is condensed carbon dioxide, much like the snowy blowhog. Different species within the Blowhog family have many features in common when you look closely at the structure and characteristics of their internal organs. Withering Blowhog. The Withering Blowhog is a close relative of the Puffy Blowhog, but its breath is significantly weaker. However, its breath does contain a petal-withering plant hormone that causes flowers to instantly lose their petals. Although its breath has not been studied in detail, analysis of the chemical compounds involved hold great promise for the biotechnological sector. Lesser Spotted Jellyfloat. This native jellyfloat is indigenous to the region. Unfortunately, it is currently endangered, as its habitat is being overwhelmed by hostile invasive species. Greater Spotted Jellyfloat. Vivid pink coloration is the most noticeable characteristic of this floating lifeform. This invasive species is not native to the region, having appeared to have recently arrived on wind currents. The luminescent organs atop its head attract prey, which it then sucks up and consumes with its lower orifice. Unlike jellyfish, the jellyfloat's tentacles do not have nematocysts, so there is no danger in touching them. Walpole. The yellow wallyhop spawns in early spring, laying its eggs on low-hanging tree branches and shrubs growing in or near lakes and ponds. Such unorthodox amphibious behavior is a defense mechanism, protecting the eggs from predation by blue Pikmin and water dumples. The wallyhop's wild hopping near the shoreline in early spring is thought to be a method of driving predators away from the walpole eggs. Yellow wallyhop. This magnificent specimen has remarkably bright coloration compared to the rest of the Amphituber family, as well as 3 lateral spots. This species seems to have lost some swimming proficiency, with the evolutionary adaptation that granted its greater jumping ability. The yellow wallyhop inhabits aquatic shallows and shows an instinctive drive to jump upon and squash smaller creatures. Wallyhop. It is believed that juvenile wollyhops were once carried by underground currents into caverns, where they thrived in the dark habitat. This troglodytic species of wollyhop's coloration results from generations of cave dwelling and lack of sunlight. Comparative differences between the size and shape of this wollyhop and other species are thought to be the result of natural selection at work, choosing traits better suited to life in a subterranean environment. Chillyhop. When squashing prey with its mighty leap, the chillyhop secretes a bodily fluid made up of ammonium nitrate, urea, and water. This causes an endothermic reaction that rapidly freezes its prey, making its attacks all the more lethal. After squashing the prey, it gets sucked up through the chillyhop's belly. Since this species can store its food in a slightly chilled state without eating it for a time, it easily adapts to environments where prey is scarce. Master hop. It's widely believed that yellow wollyhops and other related species can continue to grow until they start breeding, but after that their growth rate plummets. However, in safe environments, ones that lack natural predators, for example, some individuals of the species may forego reproduction altogether and continue growing until they reach gigantic proportions. The yellow wollyhop's telomerase enzymes are particularly active, which prevents their body cells from aging. Under the right conditions, it's not unusual for some individuals to reach over 50 years in age. Water dumple. A resident of freshwater pools and marshes, this aquatic creature regularly feeds on insects that land on the surface of the water. It shares a nearly identical skeletal structure with its close relative and terrestrial cousin, the boborb. This may offer clues to its evolutionary origin and suggests that it only recently emigrated to an aquatic habitat. Puckering blino. Many assume it's undeveloped due to its large eyes and lack of fins, but this is simply its normal, fully grown form. Though its dorsal and ventral fins have atrophied, the long caudal fin helps to compensate for this. It can leap high enough out of water to catch low-flying prey. The scales comprising the round patches along the sides are known to turn light pink during breeding season. Prickle puff. Its hidden spikes evolved from scales that were once on its forehead. The prickle puff uses them to charge and chase off unknown creatures that enter its territory. Its liver and ovaries contain powerful nerve toxins accumulated from ingesting shellfish and algae with trace amounts of poison. These toxins not only function as alternative pheromones, but also seem to keep predators at bay. However, once it's dead, the Pikmin have no issues carrying this creature back to the onion, where the poison is broken down into valuable nutrients. Waddlepus. Its eyes and stubby feet make it look like an octopus, hence the name, but it's closer in anatomy to a starfish. It sleeps during the day, but will stay alert for approaching predators, which it drives off by puffing itself up and releasing bubbles. Closer research suggests that the true purpose for the bubbles is to protect its eggs during spawning season. Aristocrab offspring. A juvenile peckish aristocrab. Small in size, its right pincer is only half grown. Because of this, it often hunts by hiding underground and lying in wait to ambush its prey. Generally, crabs pass through the larval stage zoa and megalopa as they approach juvenile crabhood. Instead, the peckish aristocrab is born with a body shaped like an onion, absorbing its nutrition to the ground and sprouting legs as it grows. Perhaps it's a close relative of species in the Ambulodysis class. Peckish aristocrab. Its unnaturally large claw is used for catching prey, for self-defense, and most surprisingly, for its mating call. Most aspects of the aristocrab's life revolve around it, which may explain why they become fearful and docile when the claw is damaged. It would also account for the claw's remarkable regenerative capabilities, which can restore it completely in a single night. It is also known to blow bubbles when under attack. but this is a result of it venting from the wrong discharge valve when under extreme stress. Grubchucker. This bipedal creature walks upright, so its motion is noticeably slow, but the long reach of its pincers is useful for catching prey and tossing it into the wide mouth on top of its head. When young, this mouth stays closed, and the grubchucker lives on things like shellfish, nuts, and fruits, eating using the small trophi located behind the feelers below its eyes. As it grows, its incipitable mouth opens, and it can start eating larger quantities of food. It has few natural enemies, primarily due to its height. However, it's often found in dimmer wetlands or underground to protect the soft top of its shell from the sun's rays. Hermit Crawmad. Looking at the eyes and sickle-shaped legs characteristic of squias, one would think this is a squia relative. In fact, it is a relative of the hermit crab. This species, however, has migrated from seaside life in a shell and instead inhabits burrows in the ground. While its legs appear sickle-like, they are pincers that have evolved into a fin shape. This beast feeds on small creatures that pass by its lair, dragging them inside to eat them. Bug-eyed Crawmad. Like its cousin the hermit crawmad, it makes its home in a burrow rather than a shell. It has abnormally overdeveloped eyes with which to detect prey in cloudy water or low visibility mud. These enormous eyes can perceive circular polarized light, as well as the ultraviolet and infrared spectrum. It is well protected from predators, allowing it to live for upward of 50 years and grow to immense size by repeated ecdysis. Crusted Rumpup. Its body is covered in a hard carapace, and it has an extremely ferocious personality. It spreads its sharp-fanged jaws to catch its prey. The crusted Rumpup suffers from poor vision, but it uses the fine hairs in the lower part of its tail and the ball-shaped sensory organ at its tip to detect faint quasi-electrostatic fields emitted by other organisms. In short, it has other ways to sense its predators and prey. Pearly Clamp. Using the pearl that takes shape inside its body as bait, this creature lures prey into its interior and traps it within its shell to feed. It's also worth noting that this pearl may just be an amalgamation of outside materials wrapped in a viscous gelatin exterior. On the frequent occasions when it cannot gather food for itself, this creature can also obtain nutrients when the symbiotic algae within its body photosynthesizes. For this reason, it can often be found with its mouth open on shoals or sandy beaches that get a lot of sunshine. Toady Bloister. This species of creature is yet to complete its evolution from Bloomcap Bloister to the more advanced Ranging Bloister. Compared to the latter, this creature is substantially smaller. The fact that its mandibles do not protrude as significantly as the Ranging Bloisters is due in part to the fact that, like most mollusks, its vital organs are located deep within the creature's carapace. The flower-like appendage on its back is actually a gill. It prefers a watery habitat from which it can capture unsuspecting small prey with its sticky tendrils. Bloomcap Bloister. The origin species from which the Ranging and Toady Bloister evolved, it still carries a large shell on its back. The exposed head and legs are covered by a layer of tough muscle, so it barely moves even when attacked. On the other hand, it has extremely sensitive flower-like gills that are characteristic of the mollusking family. When the gills are touched, the Bloister cannot breathe and must open its shell, exposing its soft body. Amphibious with a gentle demeanor, it simply swallows up anything that happens to enter its field of vision, kind of like a living vacuum cleaner. Bog Swallow. This species prefers to inhabit cloudy, stagnant water, like that in swamps, and it spends most of its life buried in mud and hiding. Using its 6 eye-like sensory organs, It can detect minute movements in the water and vibrations on nearby land. It will then forcefully leap out of the water and stalk up its prey to feed. With its entirely cartilaginous skeleton and somewhat primitive features, like its round chinless mouth, it appears to be some sort of primeval creature. Water Wraith. All that is known about this creature stems from a few sightings deep underground. All reported sightings feature the same core set of details. A giant viscous form with a clear hazy sheen, not unlike hard candy. One theory holds that it may be the ectoplasmic incarnation of a kind of psychic phenomenon, but as is usually the case with such theories, it is very difficult to prove. All witnesses report being suddenly overcome with fear upon sighting the creature, approaching a state of panic and near insanity. In fact, every report contains an inordinate amount of extremely vague details, which has led to suspicions that exhaustion and fear have caused some simple natural phenomenon to be viewed as a living creature. Smoky Progg. The Smoky Progg's body is constantly deteriorating, so collecting a living sample has proven difficult, and research into the species has progressed at a glacial rate. However, by examining the genes adhered to the Smoky Progg's eggs, it has been confirmed that they are, in fact, Mamuta eggs. This discovery allows for the possibility that Mamuta that do not develop properly and hatch become Smoky Proggs. If, hypothetically, a Mamuta were to remain above ground at night and absorb glow sap, that might impact the nutrient levels within its egg's yolk. That change could lead to the embryo's inviability or break down its enzymes, then maybe. Ancient Sirehound. If we harvest mesenchymal stem cells from this gigantic canine creature and cultivate them with glow sap, the generated serum should return Ochi's leafified tail to normal once administered. These results would indicate that 99.9% of the canine creature's DNA matches Ochi's, and that the only difference between Ochi and moss may be the natural presence or absence of a leaf tail. If these two theories prove to be true, it would suggest the possibility that this ancient creature is a common ancestor to two canine species from vastly remote star systems. And that, perhaps, there are even more hidden secrets out there that could hint at a fascinating yet inconceivable truth the universe has yet to reveal. Moss. As far as I can tell, Moss has been a leafling pup since birth, and some of her DNA resembles that of the Pikmin. This is the one point in which she differs from Ochi. When Ochi transformed from a standard space dog into a leafling pup, I started to theorize that the Pikmin are, in some capacity, propagating their DNA in other organisms. The phenomenon in which all those castaways, including myself, became leaflings was very likely caused by being absorbed into the onion. Perhaps that process was also some sort of Pikminification of the body. Pikminified organisms can't leave this planet, so the Pikmin may have been motivated to carry out this process in an effort to secure a permanent leader. Of course, this is all a theory. Red Pikmin. Pikmin are a part of the Ambulardices class, which consists of creatures that exhibit both plant and animal characteristics. A Pikmin will instinctively follow whoever plucks it from the ground, so it is quite common for them to form symbiotic relationships with another species or accept the leader of a different species, as it serves the goal of propagating their own species as a whole. The red Pikmin is the most common Pikmin species. It can be identified by the nose-like protuberance on its head and its highly aggressive behavior. It also has a few surprising and unique qualities. For example, its immunity to extreme heat and fire, despite the fact that it's a living organism. This can be explained by looking closely at its skin and muscle fibers, which are made up of a flame-resistant cellulose. Yellow Pikmin. It's generally believed that the Pikmin body was originally the root of a plant that has evolved over centuries, if not millennia, developing structures analogous to muscles, neural networks similar to those of a brain, and more. However, yellow Pikmin possess a perfect resistance to electricity, a force which actually poses extreme danger to other organisms. Oddly enough, this species of Pikmin actually seems to enjoy electricity. Their flowers even bloom when they are exposed to an electric current. This fact would lead one to believe that their neurotransmission methods are quite different than our own. This species often uses the eel-like lamellae on its head to soar to great heights and dig holes. Blue Pikmin. The accepted theory is that Pikmin evolved from terrestrial root vegetables, and so would be unable to breathe underwater and subsequently drown. Yet the blue Pikmin possess a gill resembling a mouth on their head, which enables them to be active underwater. While on land, they leaf and flower like other Pikmin species, and they breathe through the stomata on their skin, indicating they must be naturally amphibious. Pigment proteins on the surface of their body essentially perform the same photosynthetic process as cyanobacteria, for example, which is what gives them their striking color. Rock Pikmin. This species is definitely a member of the Pikmin genus, but its body does not share any of the plant-like traits that Pikmin are known for. Instead, it's composed primarily of stone. The stone is actually the chosen host for a parasitic subset of Pikmin species nicknamed Hermikmin. Similar to how a seed can sprout and push through the cracks of a rock, the Pikmin's roots stretch deep into the stone, storing its vital organs in an interior cavity that resembles a crystal geode. Because this species displays characteristics common in parasitism, one could hypothesize that the rock onion and rock candy pop bud stockpile stone that will eventually host the rock Pikmin. Winged Pikmin. The wings on the back of this flying Pikmin species closely resemble the wings you would find on a flying creature. It's possible that an ancient winged onion somehow absorbed the flying creature's DNA, which then resulted in the precursor to the winged Pikmin transforming into the species we recognize today. If this theory is correct, then onions might also be serving the role of messenger, transmitting new traits and characteristics to their Pikmin. Ice Pikmin. Pikmin supposedly evolved from plants, yet there are also Pikmin species with bodies made of ice, known as Ice Pikmin. How is this possible? The answer to this question lies in the fact that ice Pikmin are parasitic by nature, and the ice serves as their host. The composition of this type of ice is, predictably, mostly water, but it resembles saline solution with faint concentration of trace sodium ions, potassium ions, and calcium ions that function as neurotransmitters. Interestingly, the ice exhibits no visual signs of melting or dripping when exposed to sunlight. This is due to its low temperature core, which continually creates more ice in order to maintain a consistent size. White Pikmin. White Pikmin are born through a color-changing process within white candy pop buds, which only grow underground. The poison within its body is a type of diterpene alkaloid similar to a toxin often found in certain plant roots. If ingested, it can lead to vomiting, respiratory distress, and complete organ failure, ultimately resulting in death due to cardiac arrest. Though strong, this poison also has medicinal uses, sometimes going by the name Asonite. The Pikmin are ambulodysis and evolved from plants, but it seems some species retain more of their plant-based evolutionary heritage than others. Purple Pikmin. Slightly larger in size, purple Pikmin can weigh up to 10 times as much as other Pikmin species, and when thrown to the ground, their impact creates gravitational waves that can actually warp space-time. It's astonishing! The density of their muscle fibers is also much higher than that of other Pikmin, allowing them to transport 10 times as much weight as their average-size counterparts. Their rich purple color is derived from strong polyphenol antioxidants. Like white Pikmin, they are born from underground candy pop buds, and no related onions have been discovered so far. But I think somewhere underground, deep among the relics of the past, a purple onion is waiting to be discovered. Onion. Sometimes it lies dormant, much like a bulb, but dig it up from the ground and provide it with the right stimulus, for example, a good hard shake, and it will activate, sprouting 3 root-like legs. It serves a role similar to a nest or an incubator for the Pikmin, absorbing pellets or the bodies of dead creatures for their nutritional value, and then propagating Pikmin the same color as itself. Onions also seem to greedily attempt to replicate certain characteristics of the matter that they absorb by combining with or absorbing other onions, sometimes of the same type. It's been confirmed that just like Pikmin, an onion has muscle fibers in its body, and though it is unable to walk, it is capable of a small range of motion. However, when one breaks down the biological matter it has absorbed, a fuel similar to bioethanol is created. Onions spray this fuel out of their mouths on their underbellies, and are able to fly using their flower-like propellers for stabilization. Florlick. While it doesn't sprout or create Pikmin, this specimen is still a type of onion. A bulb like this one can be divided into 7 segments, is highly nutrient-dense, and contains strong energizing and analeptic effects. The compounds responsible for its characteristic smell resemble onion growth hormones. When absorbed by an onion, it fulfills a critical role in Pikmin proliferation by increasing the total number of Pikmin that can be withdrawn from the onion at any given time. Just like onions, it contains muscle fibers, but Florlick has no animalistic qualities to speak of. However, if you place one near an onion, it may start to move a bit, as though it's trying to roll over so it can be absorbed. Candy Pop Bud. What looks like the interior of a flower is actually an insectivorous leaf that's developed into an organ. This organ releases a sweet scent from its central pistil, luring small insects into its interior and trapping them. The DNA of those captured organisms is directly absorbed by the plant's cells, which might indicate that this species is attempting to evolve at an astounding speed. But in most cases, the cells essentially self-destruct. The bud then releases Pikmin seeds of the same color, and the plant withers. Muscle fibers extremely similar to those of an onion were also found in this species, so one could hypothesize that a candy pop bud is an or undeveloped onion. However, there aren't enough details to confirm this theory either way. Pellet Posy. In the stem of the pellet posy, one can observe the muscle fiber unique to half plant, half animal species such as the Pikmin and candy pop bud flowers, so the pellet posy is a species that can be considered a close relative. Although the ability to crystallize nectar is unique to a small group of the pelletweed family, the fact that these plants reach maturity so quickly, and that their pellets contain such high concentration of the natural nutrients in the soil, explains why the Pikmin and so many of the other native species are so reliant on these pellets for sustenance. Burgeoning spiderwort. Like the pellet posy, while nectar is its primary source of nutrients, this burgeoning spiderwort produces fruit with high amounts of a super spicy compound. Both this plant and the pellet posy are part of the pellet weed family, but the spiderwort does not crystallize nectar because of the different fungi that parasitize its roots. Instead, it produces alkaloids that contain those extra piquant compounds. The alkaloids are then extracted and collected by way of the plant's fruit. Whether or not a plant produces super spicy or super sweet compounds seems to depend on the type of fungus with which it interacts. Glow Pikmin. Although they've been named Glow Pikmin, it's not entirely clear whether or not this species is actually a type of Pikmin. These creatures possess the same fundamental behaviors of Pikmin, like carrying things, propagating, and fighting. They also share special characteristics, such as the leaf atop their head. Yet they do not spawn from an onion, but from a luminol, and they are only active at night or underground. During the day, they revert into seeds and enter a resting state. What's even more surprising is that they exhibit no signs of life. When the Glow Pikmin dies, if that word can even be used, it does not expire in the typical sense. Instead, it just becomes a form of light, or perhaps a photon, and returns to the luminol. Putting aside my scientist hat for a moment, it seems to me that this creature or entity may not be a living organism at all, but some manner of spiritual substance. Luminol. Besides the fact that they serve as incubators and nests for Glow Pikmin, we know very little about the luminol's ecology. When nocturnal creatures die, a luminol can break them down into glow pellets through its strong dissolving enzymes. This matter, when condensed, becomes glow sap. One might assume glow sap is then an extremely dangerous substance, but it has hardly any negative effects. In fact, I've had it administered to me personally as a curative medicine to break down growing leaves. Luminols will only appear in places where an onion was located earlier in the day, and since they propagate Glow Pikmin, one could surmise that there are rhizomes from those onions. Perhaps, using its dissolving powers, it returns the nectar that supports the ecosystem back to the soil. Thank you for watching this presentation of the Piclopedia. If you enjoyed this, be sure to drop a like on the video and subscribe.